Journeys of Hope. Life is a journey, and this is your spiritual passport. Where will the journey take us today? Let's walk together as we learn to become people of faith and hope.
Welcome to Journeys of Hope. I'm Angela Sealana, one of your guides for today's journey, and I serve as media coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, where we're recording at St. Joseph Studio. Pilgrim Center of Hope, producer of this weekly radio and podcast program, is a nonprofit ministry founded in 1993 with a mission of guiding people to walk in hope with Christ and the Church. Well, besides seeing nuns in movies, how many have you met? Have you ever wanted to know what's it like for a man or woman who's on the journey toward consecrating their life to God? And why do people make this decision? What's it like? What impact does their journey have on their family and friends? Well, on today's journey, we will dive into this from many viewpoints. Joining us on the way are Sister Bernadette Mota and Sister Claire Ramos, who are Daughters of Mary, Hope of Christians. Their community is more commonly known as the Salesian Sisters of St. John Bosco, or maybe even the Spurs Nuns. So welcome, Sister Bernadette and Sister Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Elizabeth Molina, also known as Ellie, who is discerning her vocation with the Salesian Sisters. Welcome, Ellie, and thank you for sharing your experience.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so let's get into this. I will go ahead and let you know that I'm also going to be sharing a little bit from my perspective because I've discerned religious life. My husband, actually, prior to us dating, of course, discerned a possible vocation within a religious community. My great uncle was a religious priest, and one of my best friends from school entered a religious order. Our other best friend, we were called the Three Musketeers in college, actually formally consecrated his life to the church through his local bishop as a layperson as well. So that's different forms of consecrated life for you. And I've been able to journey with my friends. So I'm happy to share my experiences as well in all of this. I want to start off with a really basic question for you ladies. What is religious life? What is consecrated life? Could you give us a little bit of an explanation here? Okay. Sister Bernadette looks really ready, I don't know.
All right. So consecrated life would be the bigger umbrella that encompasses many different forms. So religious sisters, we are consecrated, but not all consecrated would be religious sisters. Okay. But for example, you have religious brothers and religious priests, and you have religious sisters. Mm-hmm. And then you could also have consecrated people who make the vows as well. But it's not directly into a religious community for some of them. Mm-hmm. It could also be lay consecrated. So when they're consecrated in the church and through whether it's a bishop or a religious community, however that is done. And so there's many different ways of being consecrated. And there's many different ways of being a religious, too. Mm-hmm. And so as a religious, we are not, for sisters or brothers, we are not ordained. So ordained would be priests and deacons. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a variety of ways to live one's vocation within the church. Mm-hmm. And that consecration, again, is you're consecrated by God and through the Holy Spirit. And you're making that, depending on the congregation, in the hands of usually a superior general or a mother general or a provincial or a representative of the provincial, whoever that might be for a religious community.
So that's like the head honcho, basically.
Yes.
And Sister Claire, I know that you have professed temporary vows. Is that right? Okay.
That is correct.
So can you explain the difference, or first of all, what vows are they that you've taken? And then what's the difference between temporary versus perpetual vows?
Sure. So the vows I've taken are chastity, poverty, and obedience. And I guess the difference between temporary vows and final or perpetual vows is that I have to renew mine every year to basically say yes again. Versus perpetual is when you make that final yes, where it's like you're going to dedicate your whole life, not just this 1 year, to God. So I guess you could say temporary vows is you're still kind of in discernment, like initial discernment, but you've become more formal in the sense that, or more serious about your your vows or your religious community that you're discerning with or have entered with.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the temporary vows is kind of like a bridge between sort of the more open kind of discernment process and then taking the temporary vows before you get to those perpetual final vows, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you also are part of a religious community, right? You're the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians. Did I get that right?
Yes.
You got
it. And so there are a lot of different religious communities. What makes the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians, the Salesian Sisters, what makes your religious community unique, special, stand out? Why did you choose it? I know that's a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask Ellie, actually, if you could share kind of what's special about the Salesian Sisters.
I would say the number one thing that really drew me in with the sisters was that family spirit. They really just embrace you and your own family, as one of their own. And I feel like that was very special because they've always told me that, like your family becomes our family as well. And so, it's like your family is giving you. And so that's always, very, very important for the religious communities, because you're giving one of their daughters for a greater mission that God has created you for. And so that was the one thing that really was like, wow, like this is like really big. And as well as that Marian devotion, it's like very deep and very present, very vibrant in the community because the Salesian Sisters are entitled as the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians. So I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So yes.
So you connected with that Marian aspect.
Yes.
Oh, that's nice. Now, what else kind of separates your community from other communities? I'll ask the sisters now.
Like we were mentioning before, when it comes to the vows, most of the communities make those same vows. So what makes us stand out, or maybe makes that gift of the Holy Spirit that was given to our founders, there's a variety of things. So it's really hard to pinpoint it in one aspect. But definitely what Ellie was mentioning about the family spirit, but the sense of joy is a big thing too. So there's just a great joy that you see within the sisters and within our Salesian family as well. I'd say those would be two of the bigger things, as family and joy. And obviously, our mission is for young people. There are many other communities that do the same too, that work with young people. But we do it in a way where St. John Bosco and St. Mary Montserrat did it, where we're with the young. We accompany the young. We journey with them in holiness. And so for us, it's not as much as far as like being in a particular way of ministry in terms of what we're doing, but it's a way of being and being with them and journeying with them. And so St. John Bosco, he formulated the preventive system, which actually a lot of religious communities use that in their style of education with young people. And so it's a great way of helping the youth to grow in holiness and to follow their call that the Lord has given for them.
Awesome. Well, I know that this all sounds beautiful to those that are listening. I'm sure they're like, oh, these wonderful sisters are working with the youth. But maybe, some of them have never experienced that consideration of maybe me, maybe I am called by God to enter religious life. So for those that have never, had that inkling at all in their lives, I'm sure they're curious, what made you think about entering this life. So I'm going to go back to Ellie first of all, because you're an aspirant,
yes.
Right? So you are dressed a certain way. For those who are listening, you're dressed a certain way, but not like a sister. You're not wearing a veil. You're not wearing a habit per se. Could you share a little bit about, why did you decide to enter this discernment process with the Salesian sisters?
Yeah, definitely. It was just my desire to follow God's will more closely and just really discover like that purpose in my life. Like He designed me in a way that he just put that desire in my heart. And so really just wanting to discover and like fulfill like what he has planted in my heart. So just being able to, find the Salesian sisters and be able to really connect with them and be able to say, like, I can see myself as one of them, working with the young people, being present among the community. So I would say it was just that initial attraction.
Yeah, I can relate to that as somebody who's considered religious life. I was like wondering if this call in my heart, this desire that I have to serve God, if it was to be in religious life, because I saw the joy, I saw the beauty of the different gifts of the sisters. Sister Claire, what about you? What drew you to become a sister?
Along the same lines as Ellie, I definitely had a desire to serve something bigger than myself. And I grew up in a family that was very faithful, so religious life wasn't that far, but I hadn't really encountered any religious. But just the beauty of being able to give my life to God. And why not? Because he's the reason for everything. And when you read the Gospels and you see how, in the lives of the saints, and you see how God is always active within history, it's really beautiful, and he's still active now. And so it's like, yes, I want to be a part of his mission.
That's really interesting. I was intrigued when you said you had not really encountered religious before in your life, and I think that's probably very relatable to a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah.
So what then got you into religious life?
Oh, okay. So I grew up military, so I moved around a lot. So because of that, I lived on bases and things, and there's just not a lot of religious present on military bases. And but I finally encountered religious when I went to the University of St. Thomas in Houston. There were Franciscans there, and there's a lot of Dominican sisters that attend class there. And I had received the calling earlier, but when I saw them, I didn't quite understand it. But when I saw them, I'm like, oh. That's what it is. But yeah, that's how I came to encounter it is, exposure through my university, through school. It was a Catholic university, obviously, University of St. Thomas. But yeah, that's how I began to understand what God was calling me to at a younger age.
That's really neat. Now, Sister Bernadette, I'm going to put you in the spotlight now.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your story.
And I would have to say that it was definitely a calling because I was not really pursuing it myself. I was a good kid, but not really looking at being a religious sister at all. Yeah, because I had some experience with sisters growing up. I went to Catholic school for elementary school and high school. And the sisters that I knew, I really couldn't connect with them. So it didn't really appeal to me too much. And though I knew God was asking something more for me. So when I was in college, it was through campus ministry and young adult ministry where I began to grow in the faith more. And in my heart, I knew he was asking something more for me. I didn't know what it was, and I told him, anything, Lord, just don't ask me to be a sister, because I do not want that. And obviously he won, because it just wouldn't go away. I would try to put it down, and it would kind of get stronger, or I'd forget about it for a couple of months, and then it would come back even more. And so it took a little while, and definitely God's hand was in all of it, because I was trying to, I would say, run away from the fact that I was even open to discerning. And I inadvertently signed myself up to live in a convent for a year because I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I signed up to do a year of lay missionary work with the Salesian priests and brothers as a lay volunteer. And then they put me in the convent with their sisters. So I did not know what I was doing when I signed up for the program, but that was probably one of the best things that I needed, because I was able to see the beauty of religious life without actually being in a formation program.
There wasn't that pressure.
There wasn't pressure, and God had put me there, not me. So definitely it all worked out according to his plan.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, just how God attracts each person differently through different means. There is that beauty too, though, to consecrated life. I know you're saying that you were kind of running from it, and that's not necessarily to say that it's a terrible thing to be. And I mean, you're smiling and laughing right now. I would be curious, once you all were kind of looking into religious life, and Ellie, you as somebody who's at that stage right now, what is the attraction? What is the appeal? I know that you've said, you wanted to serve God, but there's many different ways to do that, right? And so what is it about being a sister that, really attracts you and appeals to you? What's the beauty of it? Sister Claire.
Well, I think the community aspect is actually a very beautiful part of religious life. Being able to come together as a group of very diverse people. And it's kind of funny. It's like when I tell people I live in a community of 30 women, and they're just like, what? And I'm just like, I know, it's crazy. But it's beautiful because it's all different ages, all different life experiences for the most part. And but what draws us together is Christ. And it's just the joy that you can experience. We're all different ages, but the joy that is experienced in giving your life to Christ together for the same mission, and just being with each other and learning and growing with each other. It's a beautiful experience.
That's great. That's awesome. Sister Bernadette, what about you? What's the appeal? What's the draw?
Actually, what Sister Claire said was one of the biggest blessings too, because you could do the ministry not as a religious. Mm-hmm. You could do it as a consecrated person and do a lot of good as well. And that's a good thing for some people. And I know for me, I think I really needed community, that community aspect. And the community aspect can be one of the best blessings and one of the biggest difficulties too. Because again, you have 30 women together and it could be in a smaller house too, whether it's 3 or 30 or 100, whatever the community size is. But it really is a blessing. It helps you to grow so much and to have that support system where you're united in Christ. And not only different ages, but different ethnicities too. I often say that people want to talk about diversity, inclusion, and all this kind of stuff, and we're living it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really are. And you can just come check out the Salesian Sisters Convent in San Antonio and see how we do it. Because really, the Holy Spirit has blessed us with people from all different walks of life, and we're all united in the love of Christ.
That's awesome. Now, I know that sometimes when people are considering a vocation, they may speak with their family members, and their family can react in a wide variety of ways. I'm really curious, Ellie, first of all, for yourself, what's your family's response to hearing that you are interested in this life?
Yes, well, my family has known that I've been wanting to be a religious sister for a very long time when I was younger. So they've always been very supportive of me, and even being here now, they're still supportive. They're always checking in on me and be like, "Oh, Ellie, how are you doing? What have you done today?" So it's very nice to be able to have that very beautiful connection and support system from them, because I'm still me, and so just knowing that they support my decision in pursuing God in this deeper relationship is a huge blessing. Because I know many people who are discerning are not as fortunate, and so I find it as a big blessing that God has given me from my family, that support system. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you to your family for being supportive of you. That's awesome. I'm going to swing Sister Bernadette real quick. So what was your family's response? So
now my family is super supportive. When I first mentioned it to my parents, they thought I was crazy. They were really, and my parents are good Catholics. My dad was on the pastoral council. My mom was a catechist. So they were, we go to Mass every Sunday together. But other than that, I could say, looking back now, we never really spoke about vocation in the family. And I can tell you why is because we didn't understand what it was. And so how could you want to be something that you know nothing about? And so it wasn't really encouraged or talked about. And so when I had that in my heart and I told my parents, Mom and Dad, I have no idea why, but I think God might be calling me to be a sister. Yeah, they didn't take it too well. And they were like, are you okay? And I had just graduated college. I was like 22 years old and had the world open for me. And my dad, who's a businessman, said, that's not a very good business move. And obviously it's not a business move.
Right.
It really would be a terrible business move because it's not for business. It's for the glory of God and the salvation of souls, which is at a different plane, much different level. And but over time, my family has all grown so much, and now my parents go to daily mass, and my dad would encourage any young person out there that he meets, that he sees at church. He tells any of the young women, you should really consider being a Salesian sister, because he's a big cheerleader now for the sisters. And when I became a sister, he said, I am not losing my daughter. I'm gaining 11,500 more. Yeah. So all of the sisters are his daughters.
That's
now.
so cool. Yeah, that he feels that spiritual connection, right, to the family. Sister Claire, how about you?
Mine was kind of a mixed bag. My dad was very supportive of it. Actually, when I told him, he was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, oh, great. I'm glad you're on board. Other family members, not so much. They're a little hesitancy, a little anger. It's just like, well, are you not happy here? Because I was living in Colorado around some family there. And but just like Sister Bernadette, just as it's a process for you, it's a process for your family as well. And so they've grown to accept it more and to be more active. Actually, my sister and her husband, they're in formation to be lay cooperators with the Salesians. They make their vows or promises, in May of this year. So you could just see the growth and spirituality. And now I hear them talking. It's like, yeah, Mary's been really active in our life through these situations, and it's really beautiful. So yes, it's been a growth process for them as well.
Yeah, that's good to hear. The fact that so many people consider, how is my relationship with my family going to change, and family thinking, how about my daughter or my son, going into religious life? Am I ever going to see them again? Am I ever going to talk to them again? How is this going to change them? So it's good to hear that you all have, positive relationships with your family. And just going back into also what Sister Bernadette was saying about your dad gaining 11,000 daughters, I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because oftentimes I've heard from Vocations director here in San Antonio that one of the number one concerns of parents and grandparents is, I want to be a grandparent. I don't want my child to go into religious life and live celibate life because I won't get grandchildren. But one of the things that is a reality too is you're never guaranteed grandchildren, right? Even for myself, I'm married and I don't have any children. Physically, I am active in ministry, and I say that I have spiritual children that, God has allowed me to be fruitful, in their life and impact them. But yeah, that's also a reality too, to consider that if your son or daughter is thinking about religious life, you may gain thousands more grandchildren, yes. Spiritual grandchildren. So that's a beautiful way to put it too. One of the things that I think is important to talk about really when we're talking about religious life is also some of those unknowns too, right? Some of those preconceived ideas. People that grew up in my age watching Sister Act movies. There's certain ideas about, what is a nun, or what is somebody who is in religious life, and what is it like. So I just want to hear maybe some of your number one misconceptions. We're just going to go kind of round robin here and talk about what are some misconceptions about sisters. We'll just start there. Sister Bernadette.
So I'll start with one of the things that is often needed and that needs clarity is that we who are here today, the sisters, we're sisters. We're not nuns. And a lot of people do not know that. So we are technically not nuns, but a nun is a sister. Like they would call each other sister, but they wouldn't call each other nun. Yeah.
Right.
So sisters are active. They're with the people. They're in ministry. They're apostolic. Nuns are in a cloister, and they make that vow of stability to live in the cloister, and their main mission is prayer for the church. So those who live in cloisters are nuns, and they call each other sister. But sisters that you would see out in the public are sisters, and we're not nuns. So that would be a misconception and I guess you would say a misuse of terminology as well, because people really do not know that. I don't think I knew that prior to entering religious life. I just, I'm going to go be with the nuns. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you for pointing that out as well. Sister Claire, how about you? What's a misconception?
Maybe to go along with the difference between nuns and sisters is like you spend all day praying. And I'm just like, no, we don't. Or like the routine can get boring. It's just like, really, it doesn't. Like you really, yes, you have your things you have to do each day, but honestly, you never know what each day is going to bring. So every day, I always tell my kids, I teach middle school, that I was like, whenever they say they're bored or something, I'm just like, wow, I haven't been bored for like 7 years. Like, there's always something to do. And that's awesome. It's like little mini adventures in each day. But it's all sanctified as well. How the liturgy of life, it's like as you're doing chores or as you're doing your ministry or even just being with a sister, it's like as long as you're offering it to God, it sanctifies that moment.
I love that. So you are praying, just not in maybe the stereotypical way.
Not like sitting in a chapel in front of the tabernacle.
Yes. Okay, well, we're going to hear also from Ellie, but we're going to come back to her after this break. We're here with Sister Bernadette Mota, Sister Claire Ramos, and Ellie Molina, and we are talking with them about the call to religious life. What is it? What is it like? How did they get there? And in our second segment, we're going to continue learning about this journey, some of the challenges, the joys of the journey, as well as, again, shedding light and hope in those preconceived notions and those stereotypes, because we want to know the truth and we want to get through this journey with hope for all of you that are listening, so you can spread that hope as well. You're listening to Journeys of Hope, a program of Pilgrim Center of Hope. We'll be right back after this break to talk more about the journey to consecrated life. This is Angela Sealana.
And I'm Jason Nunez.
We are two of the hosts of Journeys of Hope, the weekly radio broadcast and podcast program that brings you inspiring stories of faith, hope, and love from around the world. We have an important message today to share with you.
As we approach the 5th year of this program, because of you, we have been able to reach tens of thousands of people through podcasts and over the airwaves.
When we say that Pilgrim Center of Hope's programming is supported by God's grace and by you, we truly mean it. We're grateful for everyone who has supported us to make our mission possible since 1993. This effort of support and the need for support is ongoing. Presently, Pilgrim Center of Hope is seeking monthly supporters who want to help us continue our mission of guiding people to encounter Christ.
You can also make a difference by sponsoring a week of Journeys of Hope for only $50. You can dedicate a week of the program to a special person or organization of your choice.
This can be a spiritual gift, an honor, or in memory of someone who has touched your life.
Your dedication will not only honor your loved one, but also join us in our mission of evangelization and spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to thousands of listeners.
Please consider becoming a monthly supporter of Pilgrim Center of Hope or dedicated Journeys of Hope program today. You can do so by visiting pilgrimcenterofhope.org and click How to Help. There you'll find a donation form. Or if you'd like to dedicate a Journeys of Hope program, you can do so on our wish list.
Feel free to call us at 210-521-3377 to discuss how you can partner with Pilgrim Center of Hope to continue guiding people to Christ. Thank you for your generosity, and as we say at Pilgrim Center of Hope, every little bit helps. May God bless you.
Welcome back to Journeys of Hope. I'm Angela Sealana, Media Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, and today we're learning about the journey to religious and consecrated life. We're joined by Salesian sisters Bernadette Mota and Claire Ramos, as well as Elizabeth Molina, who is discerning her vocation with the Salesian sisters. So thank you again, ladies, for being so generous and joining us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going into, what is this journey to religious life? And I'm really curious. We've talked a little bit about how this journey has affected your relationship with your family. What about your friends? Do you still have friends from before you entered a convent door? And is it possible to maintain friendships? Because I know religious sometimes are moved around the country, right, to different places. So I'll start with Sister Claire, because you're still in temporary vows, and so maybe it's a little bit fresher for you to kind of the before time.
BC time. Yeah, it's totally possible to have friends outside of the convent and to maintain your friendships that you had before. It will change because you moved, that you mentioned that, and because your lifestyle is basically changing. So, you're not going out with them on Friday nights. It's like, no, I have other responsibilities that I have to do. And so, but it's totally possible to maintain those friendships. And honestly, they might grow more because of what you're choosing and how you're choosing to live your life. So it might actually get into a deeper level, because then they're going to start seeing you as religious. We wear habits. Salesian sisters wear habits, for those who don't know. But they see God in your habit, or they see Mary. And so they begin to see you a little differently as well. So it's like your relationship changed, but in a very good way. It deepens spiritually.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Sister Bernadette, what about you?
Yes, I still have friends. And you have friends that you have from before. You have new friends that you make as a sister. And then you have your friends of your sisters, too. And yes, we move from convent to convent, but those relationships that you make, they continue. And some of them, after time, you don't see them very much. But I still have some friends from college that actually this past Christmas, I was able to be with one of my friends from college, and she came and joined us for Mass on Christmas Eve. And she's not Catholic. And so she came with her boys and joined us for their Mass and was very happy to be with us for that occasion. And so, yes, and I've been out of college now for over 20 years. Yeah, so friendships still remain. The ones that you want to keep still remain, and the ones that maybe you're not able to keep because of distance or time, they're still in your heart.
Mm-hmm. That's really good to hear. And now, Ellie, you are still discerning religious life. Do you still have your friends, or have they totally, thought that you were weird and decided not to associate with you anymore?
No, I only have a very close friend group that I usually hang out with. But now being here, they are very supportive of my decision. Like Sister Claire mentioned, like they do see you differently because, I'm not wearing a habit, but I am wearing a uniform. Mm-hmm. So they're like, wow, like she's choosing to live a life that's very different from how, modern, young people think, getting a job, getting married. So yeah, like they definitely do see that different aspect, but they definitely do respect me and in a way like look up to me, and like they do send a message saying like, oh Ellie, can you like pray for this for me, or for like my family, or they just reach out to ask how I'm doing, things like that. So it's very beautiful to see how my relationship with my friends is still maintained, and just being able to connect with them once in a while to check in on each other.
Thank you for sharing that, because it reminded me so much of my friendships. I mentioned before the break that my two best friends from college entered religious life as a priest, one consecrated his life as a layperson, and I'm married. And so it's kind of funny because between the three of us, we span the gap of like every vocation.
That's cool.
But it's neat because as you were saying, your friends kind of respect you. I do respect my friends very much who have consecrated their life to God. But at the same time, I also feel like we all help each other become holier. And I think, really that's what the world needs right now is more people to encourage others around them to draw closer to God and to see, what is important in life, right? What brings love and joy and beauty in the world. And so I'm very glad to hear you say that. Now, the journey to religious life and actually becoming a professed sister is maybe a mystery for a lot of people. They don't know how one day a girl goes from just somebody who's a young person and is interested to wearing a full habit, and she's living in a convent and she is in it for life. So could you tell us, what is the first step, Ellie, like when you were thinking about this, what was the first step that you really took in your journey?
Yeah, so as I said, like I've been discerning religious life for a while, but being able to receive that guidance from a spiritual director. So I was in a program involved with the Salesian sisters called the Fiat Project, and it's an 8-month discernment program, and I feel like that's really helped me be able to stay in touch with a spiritual director and be able to talk to her once a month, share with her what I'm thinking, and being able to just be very open and vulnerable with her. And yeah, she was really able to tell me, that if you're thinking about it, just give it a try. Like, you have nothing to lose. And she said that, and if you discover that it's not for you, it's not going to be time wasted. It's going to be time gained. And so I felt like that was like, whoa, okay, this is like really good. So I definitely, asked for an application. And from there, I just, did like the whole process.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point too, that, even if you decide at the end of, your journey, maybe the end of, I don't know, next month or something, you know what? I don't think God is calling me to this life. And like you said, or maybe as your spiritual director said, it's not a waste because you learn so much about yourself through the process, right?
Yes.
I'm curious with the sisters, what was your first step in your discernment process, Sister Claire?
Well, mine was similar to Ellie. I joined a discernment group. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like the prototype of Fiat Project with the Salesian sisters. So I went through that, and you do get a spiritual director through that discernment group. And it was very helpful to be able to do that. And in that program, they help you even discern. Like, they teach you how to discern. And because it's confusing, and it's not like there's a plethora of people discerning, or at least you didn't know that until you started discerning. You're just like, oh, hey, I do have people that I can talk to and be with. And then after that, I went to a come and see. So I came, and I was in San Antonio here, actually at St. John Bosco. I came to the summer camp for 2 weeks, and with the discernment group there as well. And so you're just with the mission, and then you're still coming out and with your spiritual director or the Vocations director, and you're kind of learning about the charism, but then also asking questions about community life because you're also living with the sisters. And that was basically my first steps to entering this life.
Mm-hmm. So gaining some experience of what is the life like, and sort of trying it out in a way that isn't like a commitment per se, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sister Bernadette, how about you?
Yes. And like I shared a little bit earlier with the lay missions program that I did, that's really how I began that process. And so with it, like with our sisters, we have a program called Vows, which allows young adults to serve and work with the sisters alongside them in the mission. And so that is a great way for somebody who is kind of discerning but still needs a little bit more time and an extra nudge or a kick in the rear kind of thing too. That would be a great way to help within that discernment process. So like for me, that's what really helped me. And then after I did that year of service, then I actually went and visited where our sisters were at near my home. And that also happened to be the house of formation for the young ladies who were discerning their vocation as candidates and postulants. So I got to meet the young ladies who were in training, and I saw, oh, they're regular people just like me. And so that helped out a lot too, to see those young women who had made that step, that first step. And I would say that would be a really good thing for somebody who is discerning to visit or to do some type of experience where they can see firsthand what it's like.
That's true. From my experience of discerning religious life, I first kind of thought of it as like a intellectual exercise, like, oh, God is just going to tell me through thinking about it, whether I'm called to this life or not. But it really was through going to retreats with different communities, really trying to live among them and sort of understand what is their mission and their call, and does that kind of resonate with what's in my heart. And ultimately, there was one community in particular, the Daughters of St. Paul, that I felt called to because of their immediate mission. And I was volunteering with them, and I would go and visit them at their convent regularly, pray with them. And through that process, I just felt really frustrated because I realized that it wasn't what God was calling me to. And sometimes that happens, but it's also, I think my frustration was in thinking that I was definitely called to religious life, and then realizing that the glove was not fitting and wherever I went. But, when I met my husband, it was just like that. It was like, this is who I'm called to be with. So it is taking that time to go and try different things, right? To try and see, what is God asking of me? So let's say you go through some different processes, experiences with a community. At what point do you say, hey, I really want to think about being a sister? Like, how do you do that?
Well, I know that two of them mentioned that they did some of our discernment programs that we have. And so with those discernment programs, it really helps them to make that step. So I would really recommend having spiritual direction or going through some type of discernment program, because that's what will help somebody. But through that time, you're growing in who you are as a person, and you're growing in your relationship with God. So if somebody doesn't already have a really deep relationship with God, they need to work on that first. And you're never going to be perfectly holy. It's part of the process too. Mm-hmm. So you're working on it, you're growing, you're learning more about yourself. And through all that process, you just, at some point, you have to take a leap of faith too, and some courage goes along with it, because it's never going to be 100% surety that this is for you or not for you. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's a formation process, and you don't just enter and you're a sister all at once. And even when you become a sister for the first vows, you do it in your heart forever. But you still have time to make sure that it's exactly where God wants you.
Right. So you're talking about those temporary vows, right? Where it's year to year, you're renewing it, like Sister Claire.
Yes.
So if let's say you tell the vocation director, hey, I really am serious about considering this life. What do they do for you or with you, or do they make you take a test, or how does that work?
Well, I know for me, I had to have a conversation with the vocations director. It's I think what helped me push me over is that I didn't want to go home after my come and see, because I remember asking my spiritual director, I'm like, how do you know a community's right? Mm-hmm. And she was just like, you'll just know. And I was like, that is the most unhelpful answer ever. So anyways, I go, but I knew, you just know. And it's I knew because I didn't want to go home. Mm-hmm. And that's crazy for me because I love my family. I love being home. But when I came to that realization, I had to have that conversation with the vocations director. It's I think I really am being called to enter here. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you have to, I believe, and you can't correct me on this, Sister Bernadette, you know more than I do right now, is we don't give applications, Salesian sisters, you have to ask for them. So the person who's discerning, you have to ask for the application. So we don't assume that every woman that comes and discerns with us is going to ask for an application. Mm-hmm. Like, we allow the freedom of the spirit, the freedom of the person. And so that's kind of how it happened. It's like I had that conversation with her and I asked for an application, and that just set the wheels rolling.
Awesome. Sister Brenda, is there anything you want to add to that?
And it depends on the person and how the process is going. But
sure.
Even, I jokingly say that I never asked for an application because I didn't know you had needed to. I was like, I want to enter. Like, okay, you can enter with us. I'm like, cool. All right, what do I do next? and then like after like a couple of months, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you have to fill this application thing out. I'm like, okay, let me fill it out. Yeah. And so yes, it varies from person to person. But I had already lived with the sisters for a year, so it was a little different in my circumstance, but the reason why oftentimes where she was saying they want the person to ask for it because we're not forcing it on them, and we want it to come from them too. And so, but we'll like if somebody isn't asking yet, well, we might like put the bug in their ear saying, you know, when you're ready, ask for an application. That way they, oh, okay, yeah, I'd like to have one, please. And at the same point, like Sister Clara mentioned, not everybody has a vocation to religious life. It's a calling. It definitely is. And it's a calling that needs to be responded to. And it's not a holier calling than other vocations. Marriage and religious life and single life, whatever it is, every vocation is a call to holiness. And the question is, which one is the one for you that will make you holier for you? And so each of them are all beautiful vocations in the church. And I know like through our discernment programs, that's one of the things that we really try to help the young people to see, that you can be holy as a married person, and you can be holy as a sister, and you can be holy as a consecrated virgin. They're all holy. But which one is for you?
Right. Yeah. Ideally, we all should be images of Christ walking around this earth, right? And images of our Blessed Mother walking around this earth. And so thank you for pointing that out, because no matter whether you're wearing the habit or you're not because of your vocation in life, that is part of everyone's call as a Christian, as a baptized Christian. So let's say you are, though. Let's say you are called to enter religious life. You go through the application process, and I'm assuming that, Ellie, you're at the beginning of what happens after that, right? So you're actually formally, in a way, living some of that Salesian sister life, but kind of light. Yes. So what is your daily life like? I mean, what do you do all day?
Yeah, so as an aspirant, it's my first year living in community with the sisters. And so what we do is that we, go to morning prayer with the sisters, and we have breakfast with them. And after breakfast is when we have our classes. But it is spread out throughout the week. So every day we may have like 3 classes or 2 classes or 1. And so, we just take our formation classes, which basically consists of like our founders. So St. John Bosco and St. Mary Mazzarello. We have liturgy class, and then, prayer class on how to deepen our prayer life. We also have the language of our founders. So we have Italian class as well. We have music. We also had like Salesianity, which basically like learning about the charism of the Salesian sisters and how to, like learning more about the preventive system and how to apply that in schools with the children. So it's just learning more about like our founders and like what they propose for the institution, how that institution or like that prevention system has been preserved and like completely just been throughout the whole world, like in different communities. Just really being able to learn and also learning more about ourselves, taking that like those moments of silence to reflect and just be with Jesus in the chapel by ourselves and be able to meditate, and being able to just help each other, like with my companions, being able to help each other and then help the sisters as well, and just being able to enjoy, because things have been pretty easy for this first year. So thanks be to God, nothing crazy or drastic has happened. So yeah, it's a process, but it's a very nice one.
Mm-hmm. So from what I'm hearing, you're receiving the spiritual formation, you're receiving what we call human formation, which is just being a good human being, and also also learning specifically about the Salesian community, the Salesian spirituality, the Salesianness that kind of is part of the daily life of the sisters. And so after the aspirancy, how long does that aspirancy last? Does it vary from person to person?
It does, yes. So it minimum is 1 year, but you can go up to 2 years, and then you move up to postulancy, where it's 1 year, or you can also do 2 years in postulancy. It really just depends on the person.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And postulancy, what's the difference? Is it basically just a difference in formation, what they receive?
Yes, so postulancy would be the first, actual more formal step. So at that point, you are in the books. The first year as a candidate, you're there, and you're yes, you are in formation, but according to the Institute, your first bigger step is a postulant, so that you're postulancy, and it's actually 10 months. So it's a 10-month time frame. And so each step in between the first year and then the second year. So I know you'll be getting ready to do your petition really soon, right?
Yes.
So after each step, they have to do a petition, a formal letter saying that I would like to go to the next step. Mm-hmm. And so then, again, it's case by case. So if somebody's ready and the congregation says, yes, we think you're ready, then they go to the next step. Or again, if somebody says, I'm not at peace. This isn't where God wants me, but I love you all, and I'm so grateful for this time. Okay, at the end of the year, you'll go home. That's okay. And and again, in their candidacy too, there's that process, there's that time. So if somebody were to say that this isn't for me, they're not just going to pack up their bags and leave tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They'll make sure that it's not just an emotional decision, and then let them really discern with their guide to make sure it's where God's calling them. Mm-hmm. Nobody's forced to be there. So if somebody's not happy and they don't really feel it's for them, and it's been a good discernment, then we're happy for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that postulancy is 10 months, and then it's preparing them for the novitiate, which is the next big step. And that's a more intense time for prayer and study and silence and reflection. And there's still some ministry within there, but it's more focused on inner work and studying our constitutions and having more time for prayer and reflection.
Okay, so then after that, you're ready to make those temporary vows. And we've talked about that. Sister Claire, as we're kind of wrapping up here, I would like to know a little bit about what is something that you've learned about yourself through the process of, getting to where you are today, where you're teaching middle school and you're wearing the habit, and now you're living the life of being a Salesian sister. But how has this process affected you?
I think it's helped me grow. Like you said, there's human formation, there's spiritual formation. It helps your heart grow bigger. But it also helps you learn about yourself, which I think is very important, especially if you're going to live in community, if you're going to be serving people. You need to know how you are in certain situations and be okay with who you are in certain situations. And through that growth process, and you experience this through, we have formators, so you have conversations with your formators, you experience it in community with your companions. That's the group you enter with and go through formation with. And all of that is just to help you grow as a person, to be holy as you're called to be holy. Like Sister Bernadette was saying, every vocation is your path to holiness. It's God's invitation for you to say yes to his plan. And God doesn't want you, obviously, to choose a path that's not going to lead you to holiness. And so part of that holiness is accepting your weaknesses and working on them, but not being discouraged by them. And also, it's taking your strengths and figuring out, how do I use this for the betterment and the glory of God's kingdom? And yeah, it's just a wonderful, beautiful experience. It's not always easy. It's not, because you are growing as a person, and you're going to have to confront yourself, and maybe some things you didn't even know about yourself, it just pops up because, you know, you are having that deep discernment within yourself, and you're letting God guide it. So having that docility to be led by the Spirit to encounter yourself, but in the encountering of yourself, you're encountering Christ working within you. And if you're letting Christ work within you, you're then able to go and spread him and give him to others.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think you summed it up so well, and we could be here for hours talking about this journey, but I really thank you all, ladies, for being here today and sharing your journey to religious life.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
This brings us to our jewel for the journey, our tradition to give you a quote to think about as we go forth. And today we're talking about Pope Francis's quote and the World Day of Prayer for Vocations in 2018. He said, we should not wait to be perfect in order to respond with our generous yes, nor be fearful of our limitations and sins, but instead open our hearts to the voice of our Lord. So, fellow pilgrims, we invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of events, media, outreach, and pilgrimage journeys. We're a nonprofit ministry. Join us in this vital mission of evangelization as we guide people to Christ and the church. You can learn more about the Salesian Sisters as well as our ministry. We're going to connect you if you visit our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or by calling us at 210-521-3377. That's 210-521-3377, or pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Find our Journeys of Hope page there, and we'll connect you to the Salesian Sisters as well as the Vocations office here in San Antonio. Fellow pilgrims, let's strive to live each day with love and hope. Until next time, God bless you.